Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we've got ourselves a track from an act's name, and apologies for the pronunciation of this potentially, Magnús Viðar. This track titled Egilsstaðir. And if we switch over to here, we got ourselves the art for this on MusicBee. This is off of their upcoming album titled Introducing Magnús Viðar. Looking forward to hearing this track today from start till finish. We're going to hear what we think. Let's go. What have we got? Interesting use of Foley at the start. Oh. Interesting resonance with the bass. Is that a kind of a funkish approach to the vocals? Sound design with those side parts. Really interesting sound design with the way it's kind of resonant in the center. No, that's nice bringing it back like that. No, I did actually enjoy my time with that. That's a sincerely interesting track, and we're going to talk about it more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Magnús Viðar, titled Egilsstaðir, off of the upcoming Introducing Magnús Viðar album. In this section, I'm going to provide an overall song analysis of everything from lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally, my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? So I decided to have a look into what the name might mean. Apparently it translates to Eagle's Place, according to Google, an Icelandic named after an individual farmstead. It's also apparently the largest town in East Iceland and its main service transportation and administration center. So it could be either of those two things. So I think the way to look at this track is to potentially see it as Magnús's kind of like song about that place, and it genuinely sounds magical. There are vocal parts, and it's kind of done in this kind of funkish way, which again, considering that Magnús, as I understand it, is 17 years of age, probably grew up with funk music over the last kind of like few years, and so it's cool, it's dope. That kind of makes sense in terms of creative inspiration. I think that generally what's neat about this kind of music is that it's almost more of a kind of a rhythmic device that is kind of neutral in regard to the things around it. It's got this kind of rapping da ba da 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 ba da 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 with a kind of a 16th note groove that when presented with some sort of like whole notes or half notes or dotted or whatever is a nice sort of rhythmic contrast, and also just a cool kind of consistency and added sense of depth to it. So I think it's more about the style and maybe the substance of it, as opposed to it being a specific, this is telling you a story. I mean, it might have been telling you a story, I'm not sure, I just didn't get the words clearly in that part, but ultimately I still think it's very neat, it's a fun idea. But there's just far more to this track than just that, even though that's quite cool. This track at 3 minutes 22 is quite well structured. There's several different distinct parts to it, segments that each have their own sort of intensity and variety of sort of distinct colorations, or at least combinations, as I do share some sort of specific elements, such as the lushness of some of those synth bends. But if we just go from the start, before you even go into the track itself, you have someone putting a tape into their tape deck, and you're about to start recording, and it's just such a good little use of Foley there. It kind of really gets you into the mode. And you have these keys there, or these synths that are put forward with a kind of vinyl sort of like crackle over top of it. And it's just a fun idea. It kind of reminds me of some of the music from the 70s from like ABBA and stuff like that. There's this nice kind of sort of simmer as well to the cymbals there that present themselves, and there's like a shuffle to it. And it's very kind of upbeat and positive sounding. When the bass comes in, it's quite prominent, and while I would potentially caution that maybe we would want to put a 50 hertz pass on that just to kind of round out the low end, the subs just a little bit to allow a bit more of the kick through, I do quite like the way it's presented. I do think, to be fair, my comments on the sub bass are less relevant when you have everything coming on the sides there, those fluffy pads and stuff, which are hypnotic and mesmerizing in their approach. And I do quite like that the bass does more than simply be a root note to the things that are on top of it. It has its own sort of signature rhythm and kind of beat boops around and plays around with eighths and 16ths. And it's kind of funky sounding in that approach. And like, there's also this guitar that comes in around the 1 minute mark, which is just such a vibe shift. It's like, oh, okay, we have a different texture and tone now, and we're including some seventh chords in there for a bit of added funkiness, which kind of coalesces neatly with some of the ideas put forward prior on the bass. And we have these rises that are included and scattered throughout the piece to sort of niche us into different areas. And you almost feel like at the halfway point of the track, you've had quite a lot there. You've had a distinct chord progression or two. You've had the frequency spectrum quite well niched out. You have a variety of different instrumental layers to decorate and color and maintain interest, as well as an intriguing intro with the tape foley and stuff like that. But we come back down again. We do take away the pads. And I think this is kind of an awareness maybe that even though we're having fun with that kind of funkish kind of vocal part and all the other areas, that we can't take the listener's attention for granted, and we have to play around with what we're presenting. Around that sort of 2 minute mark where things kind of stop for a moment, but then they start coming back up there, you've just got this automation with the volume, which is kind of dope. I really do dig the way that we're doing things there, in the sense that it's just bringing more of those sequences through. Kind of reminds me of a lot of the kind of Daft Punk stuff in their early career. And there's this like kind of shimmer and sheen and sort of classic electro kind of feel to it that kind of impresses me, because we're putting a lot of different elements together. Like, I haven't really heard that kind of funkish stuff with this kind of music before. It's usually very kind of like minor oriented and quite edgy sounding. So it's very cool amalgamation of things. So I suppose if I was to try and sort of like get an understanding of Egilsstaðir from what I'm hearing here, it's like a town that has some heritage, but also is like making the most of the modernity of 2026. And I of the 2020s at least, and I adore it. That I think it's really cool that we're making music like this and incorporating combinations like this. especially when there's a variety of different melodies and different notes that are put forward, different sequences with, you know, your quarters, eighths, and trips notes thoroughly established, a sense of dynamic range with the composition itself, that the track literally stopping then coming back at the end, even in such a short form factor. And with that kind of main sort of like melody or theme that you have there, it's like it's minor oriented, but it has a kind of weird warmth and sense of peace to it. It's almost like it's trying to be a fun kind of minor as opposed to being too kind of on the nose or sort of sad about it. It's like kind of groovy disco nightclub music, and I think that's fantastic. It's an adventure that you go on which is not afraid to have a moment of respite. And I appreciate that it trusts the listener not to get distracted, because it's doing a lot to keep them interested beforehand. It's like, don't worry, we're back in a moment. It makes you wonder where it's gone. I think as well, in terms of the studio production or recording, mixing, and mastering, I think that's also been done quite well for several reasons. One, I think that the leveling in general is quite good. With the EQing, I still maintain that aside from maybe like kind of having a filter at the 50 hertz, getting rid of those sub basses, not getting rid of them, but like just kind of like having, if we're not already putting a little kind of filter just to smooth out the sub bass on that main sort of bass in the center, ultimately everything is quite well layered and metered there. And it's also kind of remembering on my end that with music nowadays, sometimes it just depends on what you're listening through as well. Maybe we also want the hella heavy kind of tone of those basses, and we're trying to sort of incorporate more of the funk into it than what I'm kind of like interpreting, because there is a lot of bass in that kind of music. So it's just kind of like having more kind of fluffy upper ends as well as the lows. But like the music surrounds you in the headphones, and there's this incredible dynamic range from a production perspective, especially when we come back up at the end and things surround you in the stereo field, and like the panning goes right around the sides of the headphones as well, which is really neat. Like, I'm really impressed with the way that we did our sound design in terms of the panning and the leveling and the automation of the volume and stuff like that. And then finally, you know, things are relatively level throughout. The drums, I didn't mention the drums at the time, but I dig the kind of like kick and snare patterns there, and the kind of on beats and syncopators they did too. They're just relatively subtle in comparison to the other parts who are dancing around the place. But the drums were doing work too. And so effectively, you just have a track that is nice and loud, you know, a bit of pumping, bus compression, limiting sound, but only when it wants to be. And it's kind of safe and secure knowing it doesn't need to be loud all the time. Aside from the sub bass on that main one, you know, which again, it's a stylistic thing, I've got no applicable constructive critique. And finally, from a general listener's perspective, I just feel like if we're making music like this, and if it's music that I really haven't heard a lot of, with the amount of music that I've reviewed at this point, I think we've got something incredibly positive going on. It'd be cool to see if they collaborate with other people who do like vocals to try and sort of sell some other stories and stuff, but I feel like this is a fantastic start to Proceeds, and I wish them all the best of luck with the album. Because thank you for watching my review of this track from Magnús Viðar, titled Egilsstaðir, off of the Introducing Magnús Viðar album. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias, and I'm sure there's been all digital stream platforms, including Spotify, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as you need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next SB Reacts. Spiderhands out.